Dhruv Jha. Today our topic is democratic constitution in South Africa. I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. This was Nelson Mandela, being tried for treason by the white South African government. He and 7 other leaders were sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964 for daring to oppose the apartheid in his country. So he spent the next 28 years in South Africa's most dreaded prison, Robben Island. Now we are talking about a struggle against apartheid. So apartheid was the name of a system of racial discrimination unique to South Africa. The white Europeans imposed this system on South Africa. So during the 17th and 18th centuries, the trading companies from Europe occupied it with arms and force in the way they occupied India. But unlike India, a large number of whites had settled in South Africa and become the local rulers. The system of apartheid divided the people and labeled them on the basis of their skin color. The native people of South Africa are black in color. They made up about 3/4 of the population and were called blacks. Besides these two groups, there were people of mixed races who were called colored, and people who migrated from India. The white rulers treated all non-whites as inferiors. So the non-whites did not have voting rights. The apartheid system was particularly, oppressive for the blacks. They were forbidden from living in white areas. They could work in white areas only if they had a permit. Trains, buses, taxis, hotels, hospitals, schools and colleges, libraries, cinema halls, theaters, beaches, swimming pools, and public toilets were all separate for the whites and blacks. So this was called segregation. They could not even visit the churches where the whites worshipped. Blacks could not form associations or protect against the terrible treatment. So since 1950, the blacks, colored and Indians fought against the apartheid system. So they launched protest marches and strikes. So the African National Congress, that is called ANC, was the umbrella organization that led the struggle against the policies of segregation. This included many workers' unions and Communist Party. Many sensitive whites also joined the ANC to oppose apartheid and played a leading role in this struggle. So several countries denounced apartheid as unjust, as racist. So, but the white racist government continued to rule by, detaining, torturing, and killing thousands of black and colored people. So now we are talking about towards a new constitution. As protests and struggles against apartheid has increased, so the government realized that they could no longer keep the blacks under their rule through repression. So the white regime changed its policy. Discriminatory laws were repealed, so ban on political parties and restriction on the media were lifted. After 28 years of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela walked out of the jail as a free man. Finally, at the midnight of 26th of April 1994, the new national flag of the Republic of South Africa was unfurled, marking the newly born democracy in the world. So the apartheid government came to an end and paving way for the formation of a multiracial government. So how did this come about? Let us hear Mandela, the first president of this new South Africa, on this extraordinary transition. Historical enemies succeeded in the negotiating a peaceful transition from apartheid or to democracy exactly, because we were prepared to accept the inherent capacity for goodness and in the other. So my wish is that South Africans will give up on the belief in godness, so that they cherish that faith in human beings is the cornerstone of our democracy. So after the emergence of the new democratic South Africa, black leaders appealed to fellow blacks to forgive the whites for the atrocities they had committed while in power. So they said, let us build a new South Africa based on equality of all races and men and women, so on democratic values, social justice and human rights. The party that ruled through operations and brutal killing, and the party that led the freedom struggle sat together to draw up a common constitution. So after 2 years of discussion and debate, they came out with one of the finest constitutions the world has ever had. So the constitution gave to its citizens to most extensive rights available in any country. Together, they decided that in the search of the solution to the problems, nobody should be excluded. No one should be treated as a demon. So they agreed that everybody should become part of the solution, whatever they might have done to represented in the past. So the preamble to the South African constitutions sums up this spirit. So so the South African constitution inspires democrats all over the world, a state denounced by the entire world till 1994 as the most undemocratic one, is now seen as a model of democracy. What made this change possible was the determination of the people of South Africa to work together to transform bitter experience into the binding glue of a rainbow nation. So speaking on the South African constitution, Mandela said, the constitution of South Africa speaks of both the past and the future. So on the one hand, it is a solemn pact in which we as South Africans declare to one another that we shall never permit a repetition of our racist, so brutal and repressive past. But it is more than that. It is also a charter for the transformation of our country into one which is truly shared by all its people, a country which in the fullest sense belongs to all of us, black and white, women and men. So we are talking about why do we need a constitution. So the South African example is a good way to understand why we need a constitution and what do constitutions do. So the oppressors and the oppressed in this new democracy were planning to live together as equals. So it was not going to be easy for them to trust each other. So they had their fears. They wanted to safeguard their interests. The black majority was keen to ensure that the democratic principle of majority rule was not compromised. So they wanted substantial social and economic rights. The white minority was keen to protect its privilege and property. So after long negotiations, both parties agreed to compromise. The whites agreed to the principle of majority rule and that of one person, one vote. So they also agreed to accept some basic rights for the poor and the workers. The blacks agreed that majority rule would not be absolute. So they agreed that majority would not take away the property of the white minority. So the compromise was not easy. How was this compromising going to be implemented? Even if they managed to trust each other, what was the guarantee that this trust will not be broken in future? So the only way to build and maintain trust in such a situation is to write down some rules of the game that everyone would abide by. These rules lay down how the rulers are to be chosen in future. So these rules also determine what the elected governments are empowered to do and what they cannot do. Finally, these rules decide the rights of the citizen. These rules will work only if the winner cannot change them very easily. So this is what the South Africans did. They agreed on some basic rules. They also agreed that these rules will be supreme, so that no government will be able to ignore these. This set of basic rules is called a constitution. Constitution making is not unique to South Africa. Every country has diverse group of people. Their relationship may not have been as bad as that between the whites and the blacks in South Africa, but all over the world, people have differences of opinion and interest. So whether democratic or not. So most countries in the world need to have their basic rules. So this applies not just to governments. Any association needs to have its constitution. It could be a club in your area, a cooperative society, or a political party. They all need a constitution. Thus, the constitution of a country is a set of written rules that are accepted by all people living together in a country. So constitution is the supreme law that determines that relationship among people living in a territory, and also the relationship between the people and government. So a constitution does many things, such like, first, it generates a degree of trust and coordinations that is necessary for different kind of people to live together. Second is, it is specify how the government will be constituted, who will have power to take which decisions. Third is, it lays down limits on the powers of the government and tells us what the rights of the citizens are. And fourth is, it expresses the aspirations of the people about creating